Coach Johnson came to my house, and I really liked everything about him, about the program. Took a visit here, fell in love with the campus, everything about it, and I committed the next morning. So.
Hi everyone, welcome back to Friday Starters. This is part 2 of episode 2 as we continue to take a look at the transfer portal. If you missed the first part, you can find it in the video description below. Alright, let's get into it. In an effort to prepare for the 2023 season, we're going to put together an all-transfer team. The rules are simple. It'll consist of a starting lineup, a weekend rotation, and 5 other bullpen pitchers. The players eligible to be selected are only those who transferred from another D1 program this off-season. The reasoning for that is we won't attempt to wade into junior college transfers, which are often equally valuable but merit their own video. Finally, for the sake of simplicity, players are only eligible at positions that they either played at their old school or while in a summer league. To cut off one potential comment, the position on this team doesn't mean that's where they'll be playing in 2023, just what their body of work suggested. Let's begin with the weekend rotation. We start with arguably the top pitching transfer of the offseason, Hurston Waldrop. The Southern Miss departure piled up 140 strikeouts in 90 innings as a sophomore, a sterling 14K per 9. He has an upper 90s fastball and quality off-speed offerings that can be downright unhittable. Waldrop and new teammate Brandon Sproat make up a formidable duo atop the Gators' weekend rotation. Next up, we've got a pitcher and a designated hitter, but we'll start with what he is on the mound. The best two-way player in the country, Paul Skeens immediately became LSU's Friday starter upon his arrival in Baton Rouge. Last year he went 10-3 with a 3.46 expected FIP over 85 innings, showing elite stuff with a 27% K rate. Skeens last year had a mid-90s fastball and quality off-speed and a slider and a changeup, but there's been an uptick in his velocity. Reports out of LSU camp have him touching triple digits on the gun, and he'll anchor the rotation of the preseason number 1. A transfer from Long Beach State, Jerron Watts-Brown looks to replace Justin Campbell atop the Cowboys' rotation. He broke out as a freshman, thrived on the Cape, and has only improved at each step. Reports out of Stillwater have him sitting in the mid-90s on the fastball alongside a devastating slider. Watts-Brown's an early contender for Big 12 Pitcher of the Year, as he aims to grow after posting a gaudy 37K% across 73 innings as a freshman. To get a sense of his ability, Watts-Brown logged a no-hitter in May of last year against UC Riverside, in which he struck out 16 batters. This bullpen, which I'll put in air quotes, is more starter-focused. We'll take 5 guys here and keep it brief. Ross Dunn, a transfer to Arizona State from Florida State, is one of those guys you love to watch on the mound. He got hit around at times last year. A 12.5 walk percent didn't help him, but he struck out 34% of batters he faced and just says nasty stuff from the left side. He's got room to grow, and a fresh start in Arizona could do the trick. Next, the first of 2 more LSU arms, Thatcher Hurd was excellent for UCLA as a true freshman. He paired a 94-mile-an-hour fastball with a plus slider and a curve. 6'4" right-hander is near the top of 2024 boards and should have a big impact with the Tigers wherever he's used. What many likely saw as a surprising transfer, Vanderbilt's Christian Little arrives at LSU after 2 years with the Commodores, in which he was primarily a midweek starter or bullpen arm. He tossed 34 innings and fanned 46 a year ago, a sterling 28K% and sub-4 expected FIP. He had a fastball up to 93 with a cutter, slider, and curveball this summer on the Cape. Memphis's Landon Gartman, as a true freshman in 2022, got the start against Mississippi State in March and spun 4 shutout innings with 4 Ks. The Bulldogs ultimately won 10-4, but they must have liked what they saw as Gartman ended up transferring to Starkville at the end of the year. He doesn't wow you with his strikeout numbers, but he's a workhorse. Gartman averaged over 6 innings per start in 2022. Finally, standing 6'6", Ryan Vanderkee is an imposing presence and comes to TCU with a fastball that can climb to the upper 90s along with a 2-seamer, changeup, and slider. He had a 6.46 ERA with Kansas, though, and will need to reduce walks and his propensity to home runs, but the potential is more than clear. Alright, let's move on to the offense. Let's start behind the plate with former Tulane catcher Bennett Lee, who will assume the starting role at Wake Forest with Brendan Tinsman off to Pro Ball. Lee, one of 2 Tulane transfers included after a coaching change there, actually regressed offensively as a sophomore. He went from a 173 weighted runs created plus in an injury-shortened 33-game 2021 to a below-average 94 mark in 22. Still, he's a patient hitter with a great 13.2 walk percent and an above-average 15% K rate, and he gets on base at a 366 clip. Lee's also a strong defensive catcher, too. If he can tap back into that 2021 breakout season, great. If not, there's plenty of mashers in the Demon Deacons lineup, and his 2022 will be more than good enough. The highest profile transfer of the offseason, and the highest ranked by media outlets, is North Carolina State's Tommy White. All White did as a true freshman was club 27 home runs, stealing headlines left and right as he mashed his way through the ACC with a 158 weighted runs created plus. Containing him, probable 1-1 draft pick Dylan Cruz, Skeens, and others is going to be very difficult for opponents of LSU this year. What might be most impressive is his .425 on-base percentage, which is elite, as is his sub 19% strikeout rate for a slugger of his stature. His only real fault, he doesn't necessarily have a position after primarily DHing with the Wolfpack. He saw time at first and third base but committed 8 errors in just 21 games at the corner position. Hear me out. Luke Keeschel is a shortstop primarily, as it's where he played all 56 games last season for San Francisco, but I wanted him in this infield. He split time between second and third as a true freshman, so that's enough to qualify him. Keeschel is an exciting West Coast prospect who hit 300 plus in his 2 years with the Dons. He puts the ball in play and if not, is more than content to draw a walk. He drew 37 walks to 34 Ks last year, a sterling comparison, and added 18 doubles and 8 home runs along with 30 steals. Plus, if there's any coach who fits Keeschel's player type to a T, it's ASU's head coach Willie Bloomquist. After all, Bloomquist, albeit with a higher slash line, has his sophomore year stats in Tempe match up pretty well with what Keeschel did. Maybe he sees a little bit of himself in the San Francisco transfer. After White, another big offseason name was Maui Ahuna, who entered the portal after Rich Price retired at Kansas. Ahuna posted a 160 weighted runs created plus with 28 extra base hits, 13 stolen bases, and a sterling .396, .479, .634 slash line. Ahuna committed to the Volunteers just hours before they were playing Notre Dame in last year's Super Regionals. He's an excellent defender in the middle infield and a quality hitter. Ahuna was a big get for Tennessee too, as he replaces Cortland Lawson, a 14th round draft pick of the Nationals, at shortstop and is arguably an upgrade. The second of what will be 3 Volunteers in a row is a transfer from within the SEC in Alabama's Zane Denton. The 6-foot-tall switch-hitting third baseman is a native of Brentwood, Tennessee, so swapping to a conference rival at least has some reasoning. Denton hit .263 with 13 home runs as the Tide's everyday third baseman a season ago, but that was a regression from a breakout 2021 campaign in which he posted a 121 weighted runs created plus while striking out less and walking more. Denton still figures to be a strong middle-of-the-order bat for the Volunteers, and at the least is good defensively at the hot corner as well. As you might have expected, outfield was immensely difficult to cut down to 3 names. We'll run through some guys that just missed after we go left to right. Starting in left is outfielder Griffin Merritt, yet another strong acquisition by Tennessee this offseason. Merritt, the 2022 American Athletic Conference Player of the Year for Cincinnati, might end up in right field for the Volunteers and can also play first base. He's gotten better with each passing year, turning in a 144 weighted runs created plus with 19 home runs, 17 doubles, and 53 RBIs for the Bearcats as a senior last year. The Volunteers lost Seth Stevenson, Drew Gilbert, and Jordan Beck in their outfield, but adding another conference's Player of the Year is plenty consolation. In center, we're looking at another Samford to the SEC connection as Colton Ledbetter joins Mississippi State. If he has half the success of last year's Sonny DiChiara, it's a terrific acquisition. Ledbetter has speed, power, and discipline at the plate. He struck out less than he walked in 2022 while hitting 16 home runs and swiping 14 bags. One thing to keep an eye on is that he started 73 of his 78 games at Samford and left, but spent the summer in Newport in the NECBL as an everyday center fielder, which should serve him well. Speaking of the NECBL, he hit .365 with 11 home runs and drove in 47 runs in 44 games. I'm excited to see him in Starkville. We wrap up the outfield in right field, a difficult position considering the depth of talented transfers, but it's Tulane's Ethan Groff who is joining the defending national champions Ole Miss. Limited to 41 games last season due to injury, in which he hit .404 with 9 home runs and a remarkable 177 weighted runs created plus, Groff is an exciting prospect to have for a full season. He's made remarkable strides since arriving in Tulane. After a 36 at-bat sample in 2020, he hit just .190 and struck out 21% of the time in 2021 before breaking out the following year. Which version of Groff the Rebels get is to be determined, but he's one to keep an eye on. The other names considered, there are many. In left field, Miami added Ian Farrow from Florida Gulf Coast, Vanderbilt grabbed Duke's RJ Schreck, and Arkansas scooped up Creighton standout Jared Wegner. In right, the likes of West Virginia's Austin Davis went to TCU, while Old Dominion's Carter Trice headed to NC State. Another name to keep an eye on is Kentucky's Ryan Waldschmidt, who figures to play center field after arriving from Charleston Southern. We'll keep the final position, designated hitter, short and sweet. Paul Skeens, already on our list as a Saturday starter, will double up as the premier two-way guy in the country. Skeens can flat out hit, plain and simple, and that much is evident when you look at the great stats put out by LSU Baseball Data on Twitter. In a series of fall scrimmages, on a team with the likes of Dylan Cruz and Tommy White, it was Skeens who consistently logged the highest TrackMan exit velocities. He hit .312 with 13 home runs as a sophomore last year, and figures to only improve on a more loaded lineup. So, all in all, I'd say it's a pretty star-studded team that could challenge anyone on any given Friday. Of course, just because a transfer isn't high up on the list doesn't mean they're not going to have an impact. In fact, some of the best transfers can go under the radar after not getting as much of an opportunity at their previous school or by playing at a smaller program. Consider last year. This next group of hitters didn't appear on either Baseball America's Top 100 or D1 Baseball's Top 75. Joe Stewart went to Michigan from Michigan State, talk about a rivalry transfer, and hit .340 with 13 home runs across 62 games after playing just 35 career games for the Spartans. Maryland snagged Nick LaRusso from Villanova, and he set a career high in weighted runs created plus at 129, while hitting .320 with 32 extra base hits. The most prolific under-the-radar transfer might have been Tim Borden, who switched ACC schools from Louisville to Georgia Tech and turned into a slugger out of nowhere. He had 1 home run in 75 plate appearances with the Cardinals, then slugged 20 for Georgia Tech. On the mound, Virginia landed USC's Brian Gursky, and he turned in 70 innings of sub-4 ERA ball across 14 starts. Gursky flourished into a second-team All-ACC selection after splitting time between the bullpen and rotation in his last year with the Trojans. So, with those names in mind, who could be the next breakout transfer that didn't earn a lot of attention this offseason? I took both media organizations' top 100 lists, ran it up against a list of transfers, and filtered out any that appeared on one or both. Here's the result: a highly scientific group of underlooked names that could have a strong season. First, Northwestern righty Luke Benesh. If there's one thing that new head coach Jim Foster excels at, it's pitching development. Just look at the 2016 BC club that went to Super Regionals. Foster's teams are known for pitching and defense, and as such, a guy like Benesh, a Lafayette transfer, has a chance to succeed. He made 12 starts and went a brutal 1-10 with the Leopards, but the win-loss records don't reflect what was a strong year. He had a near-average expected FIP at 4.37, product of an 11% walk rate, but had great strikeout numbers. Benesh definitely has upside to be molded into a strong weekend starter. Another guy to keep an eye on for the Wildcats is another Lafayette transfer in Nolan Moore, a lefty. His career 5.3 ERA won't wow you, but he pounds the strike zone, 41 Ks, 10 walks in 51 innings last season, and had a 3.71 expected FIP. A tortured .407 batting average on balls in play against the Southpaw suggests the .342 batting average against was unlucky. Either Benesh or Moore, or perhaps both, could have strong years in Evanston. Next up, we've got Ryder Giles, a right-hander going to Kentucky. Offensively, he never really got going while at East Carolina, declining each year until he posted a 46 weighted runs created plus as a senior. On the mound, though, Giles has been nothing short of consistent in his 3 full years and could be a key late innings arm for the Wildcats. Last year, he struck out 35 and walked just 8 across 44 innings, even serving as a Friday night starter at one point thanks to the Carson Weisenhunt suspension. At the least, making 20 appearances with a sub-4 ERA and good K numbers would be a great acquisition in the SEC. Another arm in that conference to keep an eye on is Texas A&M's Matt Dillard, an Aggie by way of Sam Houston State. The Southpaw had above-average strikeout numbers and average control with Sam Houston as a senior, making 15 starts and posting a 3.87 expected FIP. He hit 93-94 miles an hour in fall ball with a good curve and could have an impact. Finally, for a hitter, we've got Nevada transfer Landon Wallace, an outfielder who headed to West Virginia this offseason. Wallace is an on-base machine who can play first or outfield. With the Wolfpack last year, Wallace hit .313 with 5 home runs, was a perfect 7 for 7 on stolen bases, and logged a 130 weighted runs created plus. Followed that up with a strong 35 games handled in the Northwoods League, posting a 928 OPS with 4 more bombs. Wallace should fit into the Big 12 and produce. We could fill another 2 hours about transfers. After all, there's over 500 of them and countless intriguing stories, but we'll stop it there. As you can tell by the success rate of the 2022 consensus top transfers, the team drafted in this episode will likely have plenty of strong campaigns in 2023. Keep an eye on those sleepers too. Thanks for watching. Don't hesitate to like and subscribe if you enjoyed it, and follow us on Twitter at Friday Starters for more college baseball analysis.